I don't post online often, but the people I know won't listen and I need to get this out. A few years back when I was in my early 30s I lived alone in the deep south. I owned a small trailer and a little land. I kept to myself so I didn't get many visitors, let alone surprise ones. I was single, but some family lived fairly close considering how far out in the sticks we were. It was just me and my pets most of the time, a couple of dogs and some cats. The cats come and go. Most of them start as strays, but I keep putting food out, and they keep coming back. I kept a small garden for vegetables and did a little hunting to save. It was a pretty quiet life. One year the hunting wasn't very good though. Usually I'd be able to put some away to last till the next hunting season. This year, all we found were some pretty tore up remains and scrawny fawns that clearly lost their mothers too early. I remember one we found wouldn't leave its mom's body. The poor thing's ribs were visible, it was limping, and its eyes were all milky. Its mom was ripped up, one of its legs was mangled, like something just crushed it into a ball. Its spine was also entirely missing, but the head and the rest of the body were there. The head wasn't attached to anything except skin and meat. We called a game warden and she basically told us it was a poacher. A violent one. She said to just put up game cameras and hope they weren't camping nearby. Wasn't much else to do about it, so I listened. I got the cameras put out a couple days later. They didn't catch much at first, but I saw a bobcat and one genuinely gorgeous buck on the camera I put next to my stand. I called my cousins and brother, told them if they hunted on my spot to leave him for a couple years. I was feeling pretty good until I checked my second camera. This one was mostly empty, until about a week after the incident. At about 10 p.m. for 3 nights in a row I was seeing this figure in the woods. I'd assumed it was a shadow or a distortion, except it was only these 3. All the ones before were clear. Then the last picture, which was from the night before. The only noticeable difference was a pair of reflective eyes, and the slight outline of a long face. I called the game warden's office and they said someone would be out in the morning, so I went about making food and feeding my dogs. When I was washing up after dinner, I let the dogs out to use the bathroom and went to do dishes. There's a window that looks out into the yard. I watched the dogs rush towards the wood line and shook my head. My biggest worry at the time was that they'd track mud inside. They're smart dogs, they always rush out making noise so anything nearby gets spooked and leaves. Well, they did. They're a little more skittish these days. I eventually finished up and went to smoke on the porch like I did most evenings. I'd sit out there for hours sometimes. On this particular occasion I was stuck scrolling through my phone when the dogs came out of the woods in a dead sprint. They didn't even come to the porch gate. Instead they just went under the porch, through the skirting, and directly under the house. I hollered and cooed but they wouldn't come, so eventually I left them. I was still sitting on the porch waiting for them to figure out their malfunction when I caught movement in the tree line. I tried ignoring it until I heard the dogs growling under the porch. I tried to hush them, but I should have trusted their instincts. I figured it wasn't any kind of danger, and headed inside. I don't remember what I did for the next few minutes, probably taking a shit or something. Then, a shadow passed across the window. It was like a reverse lightning strike. The light from the pole in the yard was streaming through the sink window and then suddenly it wasn't. At first I figured the light was going out, but I know I saw something moving by. I assumed it was an owl or something going past and didn't think any more of it. Either way, the next thing I remember is the dogs losing it, and not the usual way. They were yelping and sounded like something was under there with them, so I grabbed my 9mm and walked to the door. When I walked out onto the porch, I looked left towards the road and front yard assuming they'd be running that way. Then, I heard the dogs still crying under me. I looked right toward the backyard and saw what I thought was a spider on the side of the house a couple feet from me. It was this big white thing with appendages as far as I could see, but it was shadowed by the porch. It went around the side of the trailer without a sound, or even moving its limbs that I could see. I don't want to understate how big it looked. It looked like it could have taken up the top half of the door, and probably wrapped around my chest with room to spare. I ran down the steps on the opposite side of the porch. I raised my gun and peeked at my dogs. Abe, an Australian Shepherd/Blue Heeler mix, was laying on his side whining and cowering. Geronimo, a Pit/Boxer mix, was beside him breathing rough. I wanted to check, but I heard a popping sound in the shadows behind the trailer and ran towards it. The only light I had was my phone, but it didn't matter because all I found was part of the skirting ripped away. I had dialed the police on the way, and I wasn't about to crawl under there with God knows what, so I scrambled to get the dogs inside. I told the dispatcher what was going on quickly and said it's probably an animal, but I didn't think I could handle it. They said get inside and stay put until a deputy and an ambulance arrive. I hung up as I got back to the dogs and bent down to move under the porch. Abe was growling at the skirting and backing away. He wouldn't move when I called, so I grabbed Jero and made sure he was breathing. He was, but a pool of blood had formed beneath him and I saw his front left leg was gone. The wound looked messy, like it was ripped, not cut. I rushed him inside and wrapped him tight in a towel. Abe started scratching at the door, so I ran over to let him in, locking it behind me. I went back and rubbed Jero's head. His breathing was slow. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't see how that poacher could have gotten that close and done so much damage to my dog. Not to mention, a knife obviously didn't cause that damage. Then I remembered the spider thing. It was definitely big enough, but spiders don't get that big. They definitely don't start ripping off pieces of dogs. I got my lip and went looking for a rifle. I didn't have anything huge, but it was muzzleloader season and I doubted anything short of a bear was gonna survive that. I decided to wait inside with the dogs until the police arrived. I was surprised when an ambulance showed up first. They must have known what was going on because they waited in the ambulance after flashing the lights, so I did my best to move Jero gently. I had to set my rifle down and grab my pistol again. He started whining and Abe lost it. "I'm not hurting him, buddy, I promise," I said, but he went on until I got out the door. The screen door slammed behind me and I ran towards the ambulance. As I got to them, the police arrived. I handed Jero over to the paramedic and they looked confused. I didn't realize until then I'd told the dispatcher that my boy got hurt, not my dog. Either way, they went to work and I started talking to the cops. As we stood there, I heard my screen door slam closed. I rushed around the ambulance in time to see Abe bolting off the porch and into the woods. I hollered and chased after him, and the deputies followed me. I stopped at the wood line, but Abe kept going. We listened to him until the barking was almost inaudible. It quickly got closer again, to my relief, as Abe ran back into the yard. Light and police lights entered the yard. I wanted to lecture Abe, but I didn't have it in me. We walked back up the driveway. Another patrol car showed up with a single state trooper in it. With a deep breath, I asked the deputy if I could wait till he got here so I didn't have to tell the story twice. They were all patient enough, but I could tell the deputies wanted to get a look at the place quickly, but the state trooper's eyes were hard. After the ambulance took Jero towards the animal hospital, the deputies finally got their look around while the trooper asked more questions. He was a tall, dark-skinned man, clean-shaved with a hard jaw. He seemed like he was either ex-military or took his job very seriously. I tried to ignore the fact I smelled like weed and blood and just be honest with the man. "So you didn't see anything but a spider?" he asked, not a hint of irony in his voice. "That's it, boss. I swear I've never seen one that size. I still don't know if it could have done that to my boy though." I tried to put some real emphasis on that, but he didn't react any differently. He nodded and considered what I'd told him. He pursed his lips and it looked like he was running his tongue over his teeth. After asking me to take Abe, who kept barking at the wood line every few minutes, inside, he told me to wait for him to finish talking to the deputies. He kept looking at me, and I realized just how much blood I had on me. So I lit a cigarette and walked over to them. They didn't stop on my account, but I only caught the tail end of it. All I heard was third time, so I wasn't really sure at the time. They all turned their focus to me and I asked if they'd found anything. Well, the trooper responded. The whole yard is grassy and covered in leaves, so there's no footprints. The panel was clearly ripped off, and that dog was obviously hurt. You already had some reports of a poacher, right? I nodded, and he did likewise, squaring his shoulders and going on. I'm pretty sure that's what's going on here. How he did it so quickly, I don't know. Maybe you didn't notice them barking, or ignored them because you were busy. As for the spider, one of the deputies scratched the end of his mouth and looked down, and I realized he was trying not to laugh at me. My ears flushed, and for the first time all night I was glad for the dark. The deputy went on, all the same, I think you had a natural trauma response. You saw a spider, saw your dog all mangled and made it bigger than it was. You're human, and so is whoever did this. We walked back to the car and we rode to the station for some paperwork. The deputies agreed to hang out in the area and look around some more. I called my brother on the way. I gave him a rundown of the last few days. He said he wanted to come out, but he lived nearby and wanted to be able to keep an eye on his animals and family. It was late, so I didn't call anyone else. I don't remember all the little details at the police station, basically just repeating myself a lot. By the time I got home it was the early morning, 2 or 3 a.m. Abe was all over me, whining and crying. The deputies had left right before I got out of the station, and said they didn't drag anything else up except some pretty big footprints. Fine by me, big men aren't bulletproof. I let Gabe out to pee and he went under the porch, sniffing at where Jero was earlier. I sighed and walked inside to roll a joint before I passed out. No sooner than I got everything grinded and ready, I saw that same shadow pass over the kitchen window. My breath caught and I felt for my pistol on the table. Abe started barking as I did, but stopped before I could get to him. As I stepped outside I looked to my right into the darkness. And see a pair of glossy yellow eyes looking back at me. My heart dropped and my chest tightened like I've never felt. What looks like a man is standing there bald and naked. He has pale skin, large thick ears, thin lips, a bulbous nose, a pot belly, and one long skinny arm on the right side. I didn't notice any of these details until later though. At the time all I thought about was the fact that I'm 6 feet 2 inches, and a little taller in work boots like I was wearing. The porch is about 4 feet off the ground to meet the trailer door. This thing is looking me right in the eyes. Then the spider jumps at me, except it's not a spider. It's a hand, disproportionately large, even compared to the rest of it. It was attached to a wrist that looked too thin. I raised the gun and shot it as its hand wrapped around my skull. I'm not sure how many times I hit it, but I ran out of bullets. I opened my mouth to scream as the other hand held my arm out, and was met with a foul taste of sweat and dirt. I squirmed and kicked, but there was nothing I could do. My eyes darted around for anything, something to hit it with or kick off of. That was my last thought before I felt flat, dull teeth clamped through my shirt and tearing skin just below the shoulder. It ground its way down until the bone splintered into muscle. I writhed and screamed until I felt the muscle give out. The weight of my arms separated from the rest of me as I lost consciousness. I woke up in the hospital 2 days later. My brother and sisters had come out, but I didn't have long before the police came in. They didn't find my arm, but the dogs both made it. Geronimo was moment to moment, but animal control had gotten to Abe quickly enough he hadn't lost as much blood. All they found at the scene were some large footprints that they decided had to be part of a costume, and my story basically sealed that for them. I didn't have cameras then, so other than us and the blood pools there wasn't much to go off of. I know what I saw though. That wasn't a costume. Really flesh and blood did this to me. They couldn't explain how the wounds were made. They didn't think it had been bitten off, but whatever tool was used must have been dull. They said I was clearly traumatized and loopy. If I wanted they could take another statement when I was feeling up to it, but I never did. No matter how many times I replayed it I kept seeing those eyes. My boys and I made a recovery. Bastard took my dominant arm, but I suppose that's my fault for being left-handed. I stayed with my brother and found some land up here where he lives to move my trailer to. I pay lot rent now, but my disability covers it. I've had a couple family members try to buy the land, offering good money. I always just say I keep it for sentimental purposes. The real reason is because while we were moving the trailer I took a black light over that piece of busted skirting. I saw the biggest fingerprints I've ever seen in my life. I didn't bother telling anyone. They'd believe it was some elaborate hoax. I would look crazy and desperate, a ruined man trying to justify it all. So instead, as the sun was setting the day we hauled the trailer off, I set the porch and skirting on fire in the middle of the empty yard. I've never been back, don't want to. I got a fence installed out there and cameras to scare people off. My new spot has them too, but I have plenty of neighbors now. I feel safe most of the time, but any time I wake up late, I check my pistol. There's only 3 bullets in this one. Should be all I need if it ever finds me, and I'm quick enough to get all us before it can.